se jako sviđa to što vi imate, ako smijem posuditi. Kako se vi zovete?
Štefka.
Štefka, ali smijem posuditi. Samo ovo, a mislim još ste ne vidjeli, ako puhnete. Evo je. Možete li, Štefka, otvoriti ruke? Otvoriti ruke, to vas... samo malo. Jel vam često dolaze prolazi kroz prste? Ne treba li to dobro ili loše, ali zato što se meni događa. Nekim isto ljudima zna kao da leti od njih, jel tako? Ja uvijek kada se dobije neki novac, on bi od mene odletio. Dosta često ljudi misle da imam nekakav magnetne žice, slobodno provjerite, ima li što ovdje, nema ništa. Molim vas, otvorite ruke, Štefka, a sada ćete vi napraviti istu stvar, pokušajte uloviti. Dakle, stavit ćete ruku isto kao ja, visoko, dignite je gore. Odlično, spremni, puknite, 1, 2, 3, sleti, 4, 2, 1. Jeste sjetili? Mislim, ne bi ovo bilo baš zanimljivo da sleti ovdje. Polako spustite vašu drugu ruku. Pogledajte.
Dakle, poštovani MMC-ovci, dobrodošli u dvorac, dobrodošli na naš godišnji reunion. Evo, ovaj puta je na mene došlo da držim predavanje, pa evo, tu je. Dakle, Jan me pitao pred negdje 6 mjeseci o čem hoću pričati. I onda sam mu ja odmah javio, rekao sam, mislim, coexistence of natural and artificial life, beings. I onda sam si razmišljao kroz zadnjih 6 mjeseci u stvari o što ću danas reći. Dakle, što ću danas pričati. Budem na engleskom pričali jer ima gostiju koji su razumljivo engleski bolje nek hrvatski. Tako da, that's the situation. So, maybe this picture is showing the start of this. Is we are actually doing something at the moment to create artificial life. If you look through the centuries in literature and history, you'll see quite a few notions of this type of artificial life. Maybe the first is Prometheus, creating people out of clay and giving them the spark of life. Or in Greek literature, Pygmalion that fell in love with the statue, and the statue was coming alive. And that translated into the later show Pygmalion and My Fair Lady. And Frankenstein as well, which is more kind of standard literature at the moment. Pinocchio, again, trying to create a character out of come alive. Terminator, we know. AI and Ex Machina, more recent. And it's been throughout the centuries. I'm not going to talk about normal life, but we are making some advancements about normal life. So we've recently heard, just last week, that a Chinese baby was born 4 years after the parents have died because their cells were kept alive. And that's actually, so we are extending life, but it's kind of still the natural life. Okay, we're not kind of modifying it, just kind of extending it in some ways in time. We're also enhancing ourselves. So here are some mecha suits. We're enhancing the human being, creating these big machines that look like robots, but actually they're commanded. Humans are still in commands. So we're not going to talk about that today. I will mention synthetic bioengineered organisms because we are all computer scientists, but it's wider than electrotechnical computing machines. It's also about, let me just kill this guy here. It's also about, it's Norton as usual. Lucian will know this. So,
Never heard of that.
anyway, so bioengineered organisms is something that humans are creating out of biological materials. And I'll give a couple of examples of some ideas here. So one is a kind of yogurt, which is kind of white when you drink it, but then on the output of the system, it will change color into different colors depending on what kind of condition you have in your digestive tract. Okay, so it's a kind of bioengineered bacteria, and then your poo turns into different colors. Nothing to do with our lovely cakes today, but this means that you have a stomach ulcer, this means that you have colitis, this would mean that you have something else. So it's a kind of synthesized bacteria that turns into different colors. Okay, so I won't go too much into that because we have just eaten. But you can look at other bioengineered organisms which could be interesting. These are some examples of interesting things. So here's a kind of crawling organism. It goes around the forest and it eats up acid rain. So you can imagine that humans would like to create this kind of thing. It's harmless. It's not harmful. And there are other mechanisms. So pollution biofilms that are removing pollution, etc. Or this kind of little hedgehog that's designed to take the spores from plants and take them to other parts for endangered plants. Okay, so you can imagine these kind of things. Of course, we're not going to talk about bio things here. We're going to talk about computer things because we're from, we're from the Multimedia Center, right? So there are huge advances in processing, and mostly channeled by gaming. Started with the gaming industry. Started with the gaming industry with Jensen Huang, who's a friend of mine, who started NVIDIA and basically has created these chips that were going to do a lot of things for video processing and for games. But actually it's turned out that these multi-core processors are now really extending the longevity of the general things that things are enhancing 50% every year in terms of processing power. So if you look at the graph of the standard CPU, the graph is kind of tending off. Zorko has given some talks on this topic as well, of how this is tailing off. But with the GPU computing, the graphics processor units, you have parallel processing, which is then extending that performance and keeping up the ratio of this processor getting faster and faster and faster with very efficient multiprocessors. So really, from 1990s, 1,000 times by 2025, right? So it's huge processing. And these are gigantic leaps, and processors like the Volta from NVIDIA, it's a great leap for both artificial intelligence and any kind of high-performance computing. So you're talking about 120 teraflops. Now you can imagine, where we were in the 70s and 80s in Multimedia Center, to have 120 teraflops in a little board like this now. It's amazing. So it's really going very, very fast. And basically, this board is delivering the performance equivalent to 250 CPUs in one board. Okay, so it's really fantastic. As well as that, we're getting huge advances in sensors. So, we have had robots for quite a while. And I'll show some of the more advanced robots today. But in terms of sensors, we now have LiDAR. So which is great for sensing things around you and localizing objects in 3 dimensions. And also we have processing, which is fast enough to process some of this, as well as ultrasound, as well as radar. So it's really the sensors are becoming very good. So there's a lot of advances in robotics. Robots have been around for a while, but I'll show you a couple of interesting examples. Let me see if I can play something here. So this is a little robot that's climbing up a tree. This is a little robot. I'm not sure why the document is not playing. This is a little robot that's jumping the fence. Okay, just to show you some examples of this technology. This is a quadruped. So I don't know if anybody's seen this. Yeah, so you can see some interesting robots that are now. This is really happening today.
Do you have to walk them every day?
No, they take each other for walks. So very interesting, you know, very agile type behavior. And of course, you know, not everything is perfect. They'll still slip on a banana skin. And but you know, excellent skills going upstairs.
It's only lacking a machine gun.
Well, we'll go into that in a minute. So this is the quadrupeds, quite interesting. Then walking robots. Let me just go. I don't know why it's giving me this message, but walking robots.
But you want you to be sure that you are extremely close to the one.
So, you know, these are real machines, really happening today. And, you know, this is a machine walking on snow. And it's not just, it's not trivial, this terrain, as you can see. So, you know, you can see this kind of behavior. And then, of course, we are employing these robots, and we have the first burger restaurant now in the US that's opened 2 months ago that's actually flipping burgers. Okay, so we're flipping burgers with robots now. Now, of course, some of this could be used for dangerous things, so I'll show you some drones which do have machine guns and can be used for sort of negative purposes. So, you know, these things can be also very harmful. So this is showing also, you know, destroying cars. Anyway, just giving you some different aspects of this. Okay, now let's go a little bit to industry and to where we see automation today in many ways. So in the car industry, we heard a lot about autonomous vehicles. And in the car industry, there's a lot of processes and a lot of classifications. And basically, the industry actually defined levels of automation from level 0, which is a car with no automation, to level 5, which is a fully autonomous vehicle. Okay? And it's very simple. So level 0 is no automation, so just a normal vehicle. Could have cruise control, but that's about it. Limited automation, where you can have things like matching the speed of the car in front, those kind of things. Lane assistance, so if you go into another lane, it will warn you that you're changing lane. Partial automation, so here it's level 2, so it's basically saying, look, I can steer for you under certain conditions, possibly on the highway. Matching traffic speeds, but also being able to do curves on the road. Then some conditional automation where the vehicle is constantly monitoring the environment and it's carrying out jobs under certain stuff. So creeping in traffic, you can say, just look, it's slow, just keep on doing it while it's slow. High automation, where you have a self-driving car, you can handle most tasks on its own, but not always. And then fully autonomous, where the human is doing nothing. So this is completely defined, right, in the car industry. These are
doing nothing in driving in India.
Yeah, but these are the levels. These are the levels, right? Now you can look at it the other way, which is that we're kind of slowly getting rid of the human being. And you can look at it in the way, well, the human being's in complete control, full human engagement on level 0 of automation. Going through level 5, where there's no human engagement. In fact, there's no need for the human to be in the car. The car could be just driving itself. It doesn't need the human inside. There is no need for the human at all. So the question is, where does the need for the human being kind of stop? Right? So it's kind of somewhere here, it's not really necessary to have the human being anymore. So we kind of defined in the car industry, we kind of defined the fact that we're going to get rid of the human being. And actually this could happen in many other industries. You can create this template. In the car industry, it's been specified. These are set in stone, these levels exist, right? So we know where we're getting rid of the human being, but it can happen in any other industry. It can happen in any other profession. So the downfall has kind of started, and we're also seeing that autonomous vehicles are killing human beings. First time, here, 1st of July 2016, the driver of a Tesla car was killed by driving into a lorry at full speed. The lorry was white, was crossing the road that the car was on, and the Tesla assumed that it was a Sky, not a lorry, because it was completely white, and it just drove into the lorry. Okay? Now, that's a driver, so that's its own choice. But here is the first pedestrian. Just last month, first pedestrian is killed by an autonomous vehicle. Okay? So this is not robots having an intent to kill a human being. This is just over-greedy programmers that are doing bad systems. Okay? So you can see here, you know, these are just greedy companies that are trying to create this technology before it's there. Okay, so watch this. So here we have, okay, that's really great. Thank you for that. So you'll see the video from the car, and you'll see the video of the cockpit. You'll see the whole thing happening of the pedestrian killing, right?
It is believed to be the first fatality caused by an autonomous vehicle.
So that's the crash site. But of course, everything is recorded. So the car was in complete autonomous mode. There was a driver inside, but the driver was looking at their phone.
across a busy thoroughfare frequented by pedestrians Sunday night. She was not in a crosswalk.
So here you can see the camera from the car. Okay, that's the crash, right? Now you can watch the driver on the other side. Watch this.
Driving along a dark road when a woman walking a bicycle appears in the headlights. The vehicle's human backup driver is looking down until seconds before the crash.
So you see the woman kind of raising her head, seeing that there's going to be a crash, and that's it. Okay, so first pedestrian killed by an autonomous vehicle. So coexistence, okay, this is just for fun. All right, that was just for fun. Okay, so we're building these robots to be very resilient, okay, and this is partly dangerous as we go along, so we'll show some of these resilience tests.
Because they are military robots, you have to say. Boston Dynamics is building for military.
He takes a whiskey drink. He takes a cider drink, He takes a song to remind him of the road trap. This is a
It's not creeping what we're doing.
You can take it the other way, okay? But it's kind of interesting where this is going. So one thing where we're getting not as, where we have a lower ability is basically where collective intelligence. So where these machines are digital, and basically these machines can easily transmit knowledge between each other. Humans don't have that collective intelligence, and they cannot do that as fast. So even if they created systems which have collective intelligence, to realize that collective intelligence, it will be slower than the digital one. So this is part of the dangerous part. Of course, this collective intelligence and swarms can be extremely useful as well. So let's see some positive things. So this is the Intel drone swarm. And here we're using the Intel drone swarm to analyze a bridge, if there's any faults in the bridge. And by using multiple drones, or a single drone or multiple drones, they're analyzing the bridge and they're seeing if there's any problems in the bridge. And they can do it very fast.
So now the drone is about to land.
And I've actually seen this at the AUVSI, the Autonomous Vehicle Conference in Dallas last year. And it's really fantastic. There's like 20-30 drones all working together to scan the bridge and analyze. They built a mock-up of a little bridge inside the conference theater, and they were analyzing faults. Now, here's a video of a military swarm. There are not many of those, but you can see here I think it's the F-16s dropping, or I think it's F-16, dropping the drone swarm. Then you can see the drones are the guys in green, and the targets are the red dots. And as the targets move, the drones will move their position and travel. And of course, and here again, they're executing the mission and tracking the targets. Okay, and there are similar programs, not just in the US, but also in the UK. So here there's the UK program, which I'm also involved in. But this one is basically looking at how a drone swarm with some other technologies around it can help on certain tasks, right, in the field. So something's gone there. Yeah, this is still showing the little swarm in the US. So the swarm actually working in action. There's not many pictures of this around. So you can have this collective intelligent and swarm behavior, and this is extremely dangerous. And it can be very useful, like you saw in the Intel demo with the bridge inspection, but also the swarm behavior can be deadly, right? So again, very recently, April the 9th this year, there's going to be a UN meeting to control this type of technology, okay? Because people are seeing that it's going to be pretty deadly. One of the reasons why this meeting is being called is because South Korea, has been developing very intelligent swarms for a while, and the rest of the world is a bit worried about that. So really, when we're talking about coexistence, right, going back to the original title, there's going to be 4 types of things here. And first one is human-to-human coexistence. So we are all existing, and human talking to another human, and another human talking to a group of humans, okay? And this has been analyzed for a while. And particularly, the father of cybernetics, Norbert Wiener, MIT professor, after he wrote the book Cybernetics, he wrote another book, which is called The Human Use of Human Beings.
And you can't order it anymore. It's out of print for decades.
I have a copy if you want one.
I do, but it's in
yeah, I have it. I have it at the castle here. So you know, so this has been studied for a while, but now, and don't forget here, if you're looking at this, we have many laws, we have many regulations. We have employment law, we have family law, right? We have public order laws, like not allowed to congregate. We have many laws about how humans relate to other humans. There's a lot of regulation. Now we look at other types of interaction, and if we look at, you know, humans talking to artificial forms, or humans talking to groups of robots, very little regulation, right? So very little regulation of what is happening here. And of course, you know, they can be used to assist human beings, but at the same time, you know, you don't know if it's going to be used for a good purpose or a bad purpose, okay? So again, this is something that is a second type. Third type, of course, is an artificial life form talking to another artificial life form. We've seen this in Australia. There's a robotics lab where you have one robot taking the humans around the robotics center and then telling them, other robots, please do this, please do that, and they will do it. So they're taking commands from another robot, robots taking commands. Now this is, you know, extremely dangerous. If we look at the autonomous vehicles today and things like that, you could see I put my hand up to call a taxi, a cab, but one Uber spots that I raise my hand, blocks the taxi, and asks another Uber to pick me up. Okay, so you can think of like different scenarios where this collective behavior collective behavior can be used, of robots can be used against something that doesn't have this behavior. So again, this is something that can be quite interesting. And then the fourth, which is where robots are commanding humans. And you know, from HAL to manga cartoons in Japan, where you can see this type of behavior saying, hey, you haven't produced the work, and the robots are controlling the production line and telling the humans that they haven't done their job correctly. But again, you can imagine robots starting to employ humans. And to some extent, this is happening with systems called CRM, Customer Relationship Management. It's kind of, you know, because Norbert Wiener, he started talking about, when he's talking about cybernetics, he's really talking about messages. The way he's defining this is messages between humans to humans and humans to machines, but also really machines to machines, okay? So he has been really, the cybernetics has been actually initially conceived from that idea. I can think of it when I was rereading this, I was thinking of Twitter, because Twitter is just sending messages between machines and humans. And it's kind of, it's a bit like a system science for Twitter, if Twitter was running everything. So again, this is kind of where it, if you look at the original cybernetics work, it's worth kind of studying that and restudying it maybe a little bit. So I'll end this with something from Stafford Beer. And Stafford is a British theorist. He helped basically set up a lot of the South American regimes. Zorko introduced me to him in London many years ago when I was still a student. And but he was really a consultant for the governments of Chile, Mexico, Uruguay, Venezuela, and we also think Cuba, and basically setting up regimes and helping people like Noriega set up his whole system of government and making sure that they're self-sustainable and independent countries. And apart from that, he has a daughter, and the daughter is called Vanilla Beer. Maybe it's funny for some of that. So anyway, he wrote a bunch of stories for Vanilla, and they're called the Chronicles of Wizard Prank. And these little, they're very short stories, which are worth reading. They're on the internet. And in one of the stories, Wizard Prank lives in the forest, and he's away from society. And magician Logician comes to visit him. We had a magician today, so it's kind of interesting from that perspective. But magician Logician, he's a magician with logic, and he likes computers, right? And he says, why are you stuck here in the forest in England? Why are you stuck here? I work in a bank. I have a suit, you know, work in a bank. And I work in a bank because it has big computers, and I can cast bigger spells. So I like to end this by basically saying, look, if the technology is allowing humans to cast bigger spells, then it's a good thing. But if it's starting to restrict us, so we cannot cast the spells that we could cast without the technology, then we have to take a second look. So that's kind of that. Thank you.
It was the concert of U2 just on the Maximer Stadium, and actually, as we live near, for about a whole day we heard 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So anyway, what I wanted to actually kind of say regarding the same things Janko was talking. Janko was talking about artificial intelligence and, well, intelligence in a last place, because when it starts being real intelligence, it's not anymore artificial. It can be man-made or non-naturally developed or something like that. But we now have a very interesting development going on, which is actually there are several names for different areas of it. You have the so-called Internet of Things. You have also the Internet of Everything, and as I know, everything is very, 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 very many things, all. Which means that if we have real Internet on everything, then of course my brain must be part of that Internet, as well as all my individual cells and so on. Otherwise it wouldn't be Internet of Everything. Why I'm telling that is that we like to use terms very often which actually have no sense. But there is also a very interesting development, the so-called dew computing, which is the lowest level of the fog, or below the fog. So what we started in one moment, we said, oh, let's have everything in a cloud. Very nice. Then the cloud, our big computers, they came down a little bit, and we said, oh, we could use our mobile phones, we could use those little processors around. So we call that fog computing. But there is also a very, very interesting area of things which are actually not intended to be computing devices, but could gain a lot from internetworking. And those are things like the processor you have in your gas boiler, or the processor you have in your oven, or the processor you have in any kind of a little thing which must do its own job. So what dew computing is actually the idea that as opposed to fog and cloud computing, in dew computing you have completely self-standing devices which must be self-standing. But there is also a possibility that it could be very useful if you could influence them by suggesting something to them. Imagine, for example, early morning, and everybody turns out the heating. If all the heating elements would be interconnected in that suggestive way, they could actually a little bit shake down the things, so you wouldn't have a strict kind of power surge. The other very important thing is if you really have a power outage, a blackout, it's very, very hard really to switch on the whole system again, because all the boilers, all the ovens, all the cooling elements, everything is on. So you could then just send to everybody, okay, sorry, can you just kind of wait a little bit, or coordinate. The same thing can go to traffic lights. It can go to general lighting. You could have very neat darkness in towns if the lights would turn on only there where somebody goes. Or if you even, you go to a park and then you ask the lights, well, could you turn yourself off? I would like to kiss my love, and nobody's around, so it turns itself off. So this is something which is now going on. So this kind of dew computing, which is actually the lowest level things, which, as I said, have to have their own self-standing working, and may not be ordered to do something, but only influenced to do something. And now we have a problem, which is about the same as Janko was talking about further on. Where is our scientific conscience when we develop this area? Because if your computer in your, well, somewhere, you want to say something?
Yes, once you are finished.
Yeah. So the problem which we are now facing, and I'm trying actually also on international congresses and in my published papers to warn a little bit all the scientists, because we are, especially computer guys, we are all really, we like to play. We have a marvelous idea, and we don't think about much about how such marvelous idea could be. It doesn't even have to be misused, but it can just go wrong in a little thing, and then you get a huge problem of us living in our own environment and things influencing that environment in a way which is not really. So it's just, I just wanted to kind of add a little bit to what Janko said, that I think in education of everybody, which means from the elementary school to all of us, we have more and more to think about what is human life for, what is it that we want. Do we know what we want actually? The problem in present day technology is that we just do it because it's so fun. And we don't do it because we really know that we want to come somewhere. And that is something I think is on all of us as older generation really, to try to kind of influence people to have more conscience about what is what we may or may not try. Well, please, it's your turn. You get this. Look, it's professional. Yeah, well, that's up now. Not that one. That's my phone.
Otherwise, I phone home. Yeah.
By the way, I forgot to say one thing, which is that I really think that like in 25 to 30 years, we will be forbidden to drive.
Probably, yes. 1, 2, 1, 2.
We will be forbidden to drive.
That's good.
Fortunately, I'm old enough.
Like,
The way it's going is we will not be allowed to drive.
yes. Like Elon Musk already said, driving is too dangerous to be left to humans. But I wanted to tell you, interesting that you speak about swarm behavior. Just to give my newest references, I was the guy at Rode & Schwarz, you know, the most renowned company for the instruments, that developed NB-IoT, or Internet of Things testing equipment, which I finished just in November. So my 7-year development there, I was the main author of their Internet of Things testing equipment on the CMW 500 instrument, which is the most sold instrument of all times in Rode & Schwarz timeline, which simulates the mobile networks. But I just wanted to add to discussions of Janko and Zorko that the swarm behavior, machine-controlled swarm behavior, is very dangerous because of non-introduction of the ethical principles in behavior. And we all have to remember, I read all the science fiction which was translated to Serbo-Croatian till the age of 12. And then I started learning English to read the science fiction of the English prose. And the science fiction influences the world we live in. Like 3/4 are now mobile phones, and everything we've seen, it has been strived for, the ideas that were opened up in science fiction. And most of the people unfortunately forget Isaac Asimov and the 4 laws of robotics, which lay down the ethical principles of the behavior. So I would just like to pose to the renowned auditorium that we have to think in terms of ethical behavior for the swarm and communication-based systems. Swarm-based, they are more dangerous than the locally based, but we would need to impose on IEE or other gremiums of the standardization that the systems should be checked for the ethical behavior in their interaction with human beings. So there should be a separate layer, not a technical one like on 3GG specs that define different other layers, but exactly, Janko, the interaction to human beings, and you could push for it as a professor, and I think you're on 3GPP and so on.
Push a little bit because we are just starting the IEEE committee for new computing.
So just think of Isaac Asimov and the laws of the robotics non-harming the human beings, because this is the intersection with the communication between the humans and machines and the swarms.
Koji ste zamislili?